right, let's get started. Thanks everyone for coming. First panel of the day, we're going to talk about the importance of consumer applications and their transition to mobile. We've got a great panel here. Why don't we just start off by doing a little intro?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike McCoy. I'm the Director of Infrastructure at the SAY Foundation. We're a parallel EVM, the first parallel EVM that is live. We just had our V2 mainnet launch on Monday, and I help bring on infrastructure partners as well as strategize what infrastructure and what our protocol will look like into the future.
I'm Matt. I do tech things at Solana. I'm going to start off really spicy. EVM parallelization was actually first done by Neon on Solana. I don't know.
But it's on Solana.
Yeah, but you said the first parallel EVM.
Parallel EVM that's live just for EVM, not for Solana.
But it's EVM. Maybe.
It is EVM, but it's not for Solana.
So anyway, my name is Jeff.
Wait, what's the distinction? What's the distinction? Like, it's a parallel EVM.
Correct.
But what's the distinction? Yours is not. So, but you just said first parallel EVM.
Running on the Ethereum virtual machine natively versus EVM virtualization running on Solana.
Yes.
I'm unclear the distinction you're trying to make.
Well, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Justin Havens. I do. What am I today? I'm the growth lead at Polygon, specializing in DeFi, DePIN, infrastructure, and payments. Been at Polygon Labs for about 2 years now, and excited to be here. So thanks.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Matt Schmank. I'm a part of the business development team at Avalabs. Avalabs is the servicing firm behind the Avalanche blockchain network. Been at Avalabs for about 2.5 years. Joined originally to primarily be focused on DeFi and institutional and capital markets, but as of the past year, I've kind of been more of a BD generalist, and so I lead a lot of our external data efforts as well as help out with a variety of infra security and tooling projects as well. But super excited for this panel.
Great. I thought we kind of started off just high level before we get into the spice. You know, we're kind of talking about everyone wants to onboard the next billion users to blockchain. You know, that's going to come on the consumer side. Maybe we can just start off what do you all think your specific kind of chains, your infrastructure is doing to really bring on that next wave of consumers? Do you think it's going to come from the dev side? Is it efforts you're doing directly to consumers? How do you see that next billion users coming on and the role your chains will play?
I think it's building consumer applications rather than the nth piece of infrastructure, data availability layer, restaking layer, et cetera. Most normal people do not care about that, surprisingly enough. And so I think whether that's SocialFi, gaming, et cetera, you build dApps specifically for users that abstract away the blockchain elements rather than infrastructure that, I don't know. I mean, I think right now block space is abundant and there's an abundance of cheap transactions, and so that is solved for now, and now we need to focus on consumer applications. So,
I agree to an extent as well. Nobody much cares about the underlying underpinnings of a protocol, but the design choices you make in your protocol do matter. So what you're optimizing for most, whether in the trilemma of blockchains is decentralization, security, or speed, do have an effect. So if you're optimizing for privacy, you'd be like a chain like Aztec in a sense. If you're optimizing more for decentralization natively, you would go into Ethereum. And we at the SAY Foundation believe that if you want to optimize for speed and high performance, you would do it through us. So,
Yeah, I think all those things are important. Like you were talking about, the data availability later, shared sequencers, all that stuff. But that stuff is important to us, and we know what all of that means. The consumers, they don't care, right? They just want to download an app on their phone and play around. And I think the future in the way that we do onboard those masses, the next billion users, is abstracting away the blockchain. Having users interact with the blockchain without even really knowing that they're actually doing it. And we do this every day with the internet, right? The internet used to be pretty clunky to use, dial-up, and even prior to that, it used to take quite a lot of work and effort to just send an email. And now we send emails and you don't even think like, oh, I've got to get on the internet on my phone to send this email. It just happens, right? And I think like the way that we use the internet every single day without even thinking about it, like Google Maps, messaging people, that's where we need to get to on the blockchain side of things. It's just like, the blockchain isn't really there. They're just using the apps. And I think we're making a lot of progress, especially in the bear market. I saw a lot of teams that are building very, very cool apps or just like user interfaces that aggregate a bunch of different apps that don't, users don't even necessarily know like which DeFi protocol they're necessarily using. They just know that they're getting yield on their stable coins, which is kind of what they want, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree. I think there's a lot of pieces that need to be in place for something to be competitive with traditional. If you just kind of replace the thing that exists, you have to come be 10x better. And if you have some known frictions, it's really the benefits of blockchain that you really need to exemplify. So I think there's this weird trade-off in the ecosystem right now where you're trying to abstract away a lot of the friction points, but I think the bigger thing that we should be caring about is how do you actually give the benefits? So is it some international payment thing where you cut out Forex fees or instant settlement or something like that? Like what is the thing that you're actually giving that's the acute problem that you're solving? I think users are probably more willing to do that if you solve some acute problem and get over some of the frictions rather than just make it frictionless to do what? So I think that's the thing that I think, we're acutely interested in is finding like what are the killer use cases that people just can't really do in today's Rails, and then just constantly be making the UX better and better and better and better.
The two things in particular that people do within technology is you have certain features or certain use cases you can't do before, or it's through funding, right? Those are two of the most clear things. So if your community, if your protocol, if your token are enable you to do one of those two things, you're probably going to be more successful. I can't necessarily predict the future and say that this type of app is going to be most successful in blockchain or crypto, just like no one could predict Uber from 2009 when mobile phones started really blowing off. But yeah.
Interesting. So when we're talking about consumers, we're talking about that use case. What do you guys see as one of those unique use cases that the blockchain tech enables such that a developer would want to pick that versus more of like a Web2 database, right? Like when I hear us talk, we're talking about, it's all abstracted. We kind of went through that on the Web2 side of like no one cares if it's Cassandra, DynamoDB, MongoDB, Postgres. All of those things provided a specific feature to a developer who's our user. What kind of feature do you think is that feature that hooks the developer in for the on-chain versus going with a traditional like Web2 stack?
I think you can kind of circle this back to like why Vitalik founded Ethereum, for instance. He was playing World of Warcraft, and I think he was a rogue at the time, and
Warlock.
That's what it was. And they essentially, didn't they like nerf a spell? And he was like, this is like not it. Essentially, we should be able to vote on this. This should be decentralized in terms of in-game changes. And I think kind of circling that back to why it matters to developers, I think it's for that reason. Decentralization, self-custody, ownership, like in the case of gaming, if I own this in-game asset, the publisher is not able to take it away from me. I mean, maybe I invested hundreds of hours into this individual game, and I want to be able to own this skin, this weapon, etc. Like, I think that's a perfect use case and example of blockchain Rails in terms of this is not possible in terms of the current games today. And I think building off of that, you could even pivot to like SocialFi, for instance. If I'm a content creator, I want to own my own data. I want to make sure I'm getting almost 100% of all like advertising revenue, et cetera. And YouTube essentially has constantly, unfortunately, negatively impacted content creators, especially the past year, in terms of taking more and more of that cut. And so I think it's really giving back self-sovereignty to both developers and users.
Yeah, I think it is good to use like certain case studies like that also, and I think like there's a lot of opportunity for developers, when they're deciding like Web 2, Web 3. where they can realize like a lot of like pretty unique operational efficiencies within like their current industry that they're in. And the case study I'm thinking of is a project called Courtyard NFT, and I think like Avalanche and Solana like have their own iterations of this type of thing, where it's like there's a project that takes like professionally graded like sports and Pokemon trading cards, and it's stored in a vault, and you get like the NFT representation of that asset. And it's like, okay, well, why not just keep it, and hold on to it yourself? Well, I think like this project in particular, Courtyard, uses Brinks as a security vault. And it's like, okay, if you're going to introduce trust into like some sort of trustless environment, then it should be like one of the most trusted names in the world, and Brinks is that. But it also like using that market, like there are like you can buy trading cards on eBay, and like maybe it's like rare in Japan. It's it's in Japan, and then it's going to take like quite a bit of money in shipping, and it's going to take like a week or 2 weeks of time to get it to you in the United States, where if this asset is just on the blockchain, it's just like instant settlement basically. And so that offers a unique benefit not only to the dApp developer, but for the users and collectors. And then another opportunity is like this composability with DeFi as well, in where like you can take that NFT that's a digital representation of that asset that you own in a Brinks vault, and you could use it as collateral in a DeFi app. And like try going to a traditional bank and saying, hey, I want to take out a loan on this like first edition holographic Charizard or this like 1986 Michael Jordan rookie card. They're going to think you are crazy, and they're going to laugh at you. But you can also just, there are DeFi applications where you can deposit that, and someone can give you a loan against that asset. And I think that just opens up like a world of credit in that industry that has, for the longest time, lacked that type of financialization. And so, I don't know, I just think using case studies like that just like provides like a very unique array of like all the opportunities that are available to developers when they're looking to decide Web 2 or Web 3 using a ledger.
Yeah, composability is a great example, because like peer-to-peer lending of generally illiquid assets, and your example is a Pokemon card. We basically have the same thing, but for tokenized like shoes. It's called Minaswap, so like Jordans, etc. In which, if I'm someone, and you're generally getting pretty good yield on providing a loan for that asset, and then obviously if they default, that asset then goes either into an auction or you get custody of that asset. And so I do think composability and kind of allowing for unique DeFi experiences is a great example of why developers choose to use blockchains.
Interesting. So you kind of both hinted at two different sides, right? There's the developer use case, and then you were talking first about almost more like consumer app, right? The benefit comes from the consumers feel like they've been hurt by YouTube. I'm actually curious, Mike, starting with you, do you think the demand will come from the consumers first? Like consumers will notice those use cases and they will push developers to choose a technology that enables those use cases? Or do you think the growth will come from developers first who see a unique technical thing that is unlocked, and they'll hide that from the consumer, and eventually it will trickle through to the consumer?
I think it's a combo of both, where like depends how you market it and what the actual use case and the value is. If the value is at the application layer, for the most part, a user will be the one to unlock that value and have a network effect and be able to have that grow. For a developer, I mean, what we're in different ecosystems, like in account abstraction and in being able to have like passkeys and user auth onboarding with just clicks of a button, those type of developer hacks in a sense will bring in more consumers as well, especially in things like mobile when you're live at an event and you want instantaneous like reference or verification or settlement of payment or who you are. Those type of things make it a ton easier. But I think it's really just a combination of both what you're trying to get to.
I think it could be driven by users more so if there's kind of a combination of like a boycott or something that takes place in which, hey, all of these users are not going to use XYZ platform until they make these changes, in which they allow for self-custody, more fees to go towards users and creators, et cetera, something along those lines. And
but do we believe that like consumers really care about self-custody? Across like this, it depends on who you are in the world.
So I'm
right?
someone that believes that most people don't care about self-custody until it matters. Meaning like, hey, if there's an invasion happening within this country, I can't move gold around easily, but I can easily move my Bitcoin, and the paper fiat money is not gonna matter when I'm leaving, and I have to be able to take my own wealth and assets away.
Yeah, it depends where you are in the world. Like
Exactly.
if your government's currency is very volatile, you may want a stable coin to be able to interact with payments with other people in a peer-to-peer way. Or, depending on how much you trust your government generally is another metric point for that.
Yeah, but like more power to the people rather than, I don't know, a company making a lot of money is the point versus self-custody.
Then there's another dilemma of like power to people and then ease of use. And like in that dichotomy between the two, like where do you settle to is like another open question. I don't have the answer for it either.
No, I
But
mean,
it's
that's
just like,
it's a great point though, because like Twitter is now essentially giving people money, or what is it? People call them like Elon stimmy checks in terms of, hey, I get a certain amount of impressions on my tweets every month and I get paid for that. And so it's kind of what we thought SocialFi would be, and SocialFi is doing this, but to an even greater extent in terms of, I think stuff like that is kind of how users force Web2 companies to give them kind of more power.
Other Matt, I'm kind of curious what you think. You've been in technology for a while. Do you think it will come from devs, or do you think it will come from the users demanding a specific tech?
I think generally people don't, especially consumers, don't really optimize for the minimizing costs of things. They tend to optimize for like some sort of benefit that they get. Like I work for Riot, and we released it's like a single leg game. It was not a super great experience. It was on like some old. The engine was from some lumberyard game or something. So it was just not lumberyard like the Amazon lumberyard, like literally like some lumberyard simulator game. And it was super jank, and that's why we still have bugs. But just people loved it, and they were willing to get through all the random crap that happened because, our patches used to take 24 hours just to patch. Anyway, so I think it's really about finding something that's super sticky in your niche users, and so you can find those in self-sovereignty. I think like those people who really acutely understand that problem, and you can get users from that. I don't think that's nearly a mass adoption though, and I guess as the question has stated, I think you need to find something that people just like really love using.
Yeah, which would potentially suggest that it comes from giving the developers the use case so that they can iterate on product and they can find that product market fit rather than have the consumers push for a particular technological choice.
one thing to even add on to there is I think they have to be very industry specific and focused. Like if you are going to optimize for users and consumers, you do it specifically in like sports or like in retail or in restaurants or in whatever that industry is. It's very hard to create that one maybe developer tool or app or thing and then have it go cross industry across use cases. So like one thing you would make for like a sporting event, right? Like for a baseball game, like having tickets and you know, making the payments for a ticket of a baseball game is going to be different than like having a reservation at a restaurant, right? For the most part, the reservations are going to be the same. The food's the same type of price there, right? But there are ways you can like move it a little bit, like from like 5% of a difference that will then give someone in that type of experience like a cheaper, faster, better, higher quality experience.
Ticketing is a good one in terms of like proof of authenticity. Like if I go on SeatGeek, for instance, I want to know that I'm buying an authentic ticket. And so if there's a way that, hey, there's like a badge next to this ticket, it's an NFT or something minted on chain that it says, hey, this is a legitimate ticket, that's kind of an ease of use and quality of life adjustment that, hey, I see this, they have this badge, it's a real ticket, et cetera. And you're totally abstracting away the blockchain, but it's a great user experience.
Yeah, so looking at kind of ticketing these use cases, they tend to work on mobile. Since we're all on the infrastructure side, you know, one of the things that the Web2 companies have really shown on mobile is that latency matters a lot, right? Like when you're on a mobile connection, you want to be like low latency, that round trip is really painful. Like what do you think we can do as kind of Web3 infrastructure providers that's uniquely unlocked by the distributed nature of Web3 that could help with some of that some of these like the latencies, the things that are uniquely mobile that consumers have gotten used to from these massive service providers. Do you know what I mean?
How do we scale?
Like, how do we scale? But I think particularly, how do we scale potentially uniquely looking at mobile, right? So, like, one of the things we've seen is, like, you could scale vertically, you could scale horizontally in your own data center. But what we've seen over the last, like, 5 to 10 years as mobile has, like, really penetrated the consumer side is scaling to the edge, right? Like, all the big Web 2 services we're talking about are doing stuff on the edge to get their latencies low. And users have developed this this sense of very low latency being important on mobile. What can we do on Web 3, given we're inherently distributed, to kind of take advantage of some of that on the edge compute, these things that the Googles, the Metas, they've all invested in? Is there anything we can do that's uniquely Web 3 that helps with that kind of like edge compute that's become a big thing in mobile?
I think just not just being okay with the status quo, and I don't think the Web3 industry like has any issues with that. But I think just like continuing to like second guess what you're doing internally and what you're building, and just continuing to innovate. Like, we've got a few different VMs up here, and it's like, which is best? They all have their unique different use cases. I think for DeFi, like the SVM is like pretty incredible, right? But there's like, there's different use cases for each thing. And I think just the continued innovation and development and just like trying to, just not being okay with the status quo is like probably the best thing we can do. Continue to innovate, I guess.
I think it goes back to funding and features. Like, will people make more money on the edges, like instead of having to use third-party providers? So it's maybe not for it's probably more in like emerging economies and other places in the world. Maybe not the U.S. would be the best use case and best place for those type of things. From the funding side, and then from the feature side, it's okay because I have more ownership or I have a direct network with people at the node level, in a sense, at the node or the protocol level, then instead of having to go to a third intermediate or centralized intermediary, like, do I have a faster experience to settlement? Do I have a faster experience to a checkout? Do I have faster experience to an asset that I normally wouldn't have access to before? And for mobile in particular, like, I use my desktop for most times where I have my large crypto assets that I'm trading, I'm doing things. I don't trade personally, but maybe it's an age thing too. Like, maybe younger generations are trading on their mobile phones, right? But when it comes to mobile phone experiences, for me, it's mostly when I'm at events, when I'm purchasing an item at a retail store, when I'm, doing things like in mobile, like, when I'm mobile. And that's where I think, like, in those type of experiences where people are trying to do different things while mobile, that's where it is going to be beneficial.
I have an incredibly niche answer here. So like Helium, for example, does hotspot-based Wi-Fi. It does other things, IoT, lower end, but you can also do Wi-Fi. And actually, T-Mobile has a service. Actually, I think they're branded here. The Helium Mobile team has a little thing next to Consensus. You can buy in America. Actually, I think they have a worldwide service now too. But $20 a month for your full data plan, and I think something like 40% of it at this point goes through the Helium network itself, and that's ever growing. It's pretty impressive actually. It's something like 100,000 subscribers, and you can put. They're like exploring putting edge compute next to their nodes, and then you can do things like AI assistance essentially on edge. It's like just much closer and much more high latency for certain like easy queries. Not having to. It's basically a CDN network that's like hyper localized. Like I said, very niche answer because it's not like that's like one very specific thing. But the idea is that you can do a lot more local stuff. There's a geo.net on.
Polygon.
On Polygon that does like hyper localized geolocation, and so there's a bunch of these things that like it's kind of hard for one individual company to place all these things everywhere that you can do these localized services, but you can do it much easier if you just have an incentive, and then a company can maybe fill out the edges or whatever. Whoever is incentivized to fill out like all those little pockets, whatever there's demand, but a big company may not get approval or whatever in that area, where individuals tend to find a way. I think that's like kind of the one of the benefits of blockchain is just like, here's the incentive, everybody go figure it out.
It's kind of what I was thinking too, right? It's like we kind of baked into most of our protocols an ability to run nodes in a trustless environment. And, getting AWS to spin a box up in a developing country, that's a whole data center. Can the power of blockchain allow anyone who's interested, who's a developer in a country who wants low latency, to spin up what is essentially a distributed database with agreed upon consensus on the edge? To me, feels like a really interesting opportunity that's uniquely Web3. Now that we have this tech that allows us to run trusted on the edge, you don't have to wait for somebody to build a data center. You can spin up a server. It could be a small box. Get that sort of like edge compute.
But then on the flip side of that too, it's like, do you have to verify that compute, it depends obviously what you're trying to do. Like there's now these like compute protocols that in a sense, not only do they help on the supply side, but also, on the demand side, but they also help on the supply side. And like Jensen's a company that is doing this in particular. I think it's going to be very hard to verify that compute on the other end. Like if I'm a customer and I want this specific algo or this AI assistant, et cetera, and I want to make sure it's fitting my needs or up to my standards, that's the point of like the marketplace that will be very hard to, it's not impossible, I'm sure we'll get it, but it'll be a difficulty in the short term.
It's a really good point. I guess it's probably worth teasing apart distributing the compute versus distributing the like data storage layer. Right, it's like the nodes or like the blockchains are very good at distributing the data storage layer, which is often where you need more trust than distributing the actual like compute that's maybe just like doing the operation for you.
One thing on the storage layer in particular, I used to work at Protocol Labs, so I was very familiar with Filecoin, decentralized storage, and with IPFS and all that. The one thing that did happen is early on, there was incentives to get like 10x rewards for decentralized compute, but then also like guaranteeing it for like 2, 3 in future years, which creates a market of sometimes incentivizing for like false storage or false proofs, right? It was because it was proved by ZK snarks in a sense, but you did kind of create an incentive structure where you could have long-term holding, but you didn't have to have anything valuable on there, right? And like in Arweave, right? In Arweave, when you store in that ecosystem, you're holding for like a 30-year contract, right? So you could put garbage on there, but like get what is worth of 30 years of your data information that's on there. So do I think the information today will be valuable in 30 years? Maybe, potentially, but it's kind of a whim there too.
I think this question's interesting because from what I've seen, so we all work for obviously more like general purpose blockchain like ecosystems rather than like specific application purpose blockchains. And for the most part, these kind of decentralized compute, GPU sharing, et cetera, in my opinion, the best use case is essentially having its own application-specific blockchain in terms of a lot of these various protocols. I mean, Solana started, I think one of the main slides in the original pitch deck was to replace the NASDAQ, for instance. And so I think your example of essentially how like mobile can decrease latency by doing essentially like either a light client or running a node, I think is a little bit challenging because in regards to like MEV and stake weight or how many number of validators you're running, I think it still directly impacts, especially on general purpose blockchains. And like basically, like it just depends on how you can do MEV. And there's going to become a time, I think, where MEV is probably the most important if you have a bunch of general purpose blockchains in terms of deeply financial companies. And I think they're probably going to side more towards semi-permissioned or fully permissioned environments, either in regards to their own blockchain or in regards to a protocol in which if you're trading XYZ assets, you have to be whitelisted for that protocol specifically. I mean, we're seeing that with BlackRock and Buildle, as well as we've experimented on Avalanche subnets with Citi, JP Morgan, et cetera. And so I think this is an interesting question because I don't think it's a very straightforward answer, but a lot of the times I do side with like application-specific blockchain for like decentralized storage, decentralized compute, et cetera.
Cool. Well, we're almost out of time, so I figured kind of last question, I'll give you all like 60 seconds. I'm a mobile developer. building a consumer app. What app do you want me to build on your chain?
I would like you to build an app that emphasizes for speed and performance. Like, I don't have a specific, to be honest. I don't care what anyone wants to build. Many people should build many things, and they should all compete. But if you want to optimize for throughput and performance, so we at Say in particular believe that over decentralization is bad. We believe that the best number of validators, in particular for a network, are between 40 to 100, right? Anything more, if they're not globally distributed, they have to be globally distributed in order for it to be like very meaningful. But anything more, you're kind of overemphasizing, right? And you could already use Ethereum mainnet to do those type of things today. So I would just want you to build something that you want to have decentralized ownership and the values of crypto we've all talked about for the last time we've had, but do it for speed and for high throughput.
Yeah, Matt, what do you want built? But specifically app. Like, what app do you wish I built for you that happens to use Solana?
I mean, I have a lot of ideas, sir. Yeah, you. I don't know you very well. I mean, there's tons of apps.
Me, the developer. Me, the broad developer. I
Yeah.
am a solo developer. What app do you wish was built that was just happened to be using Solana?
I want. I have an actual idea that I think would be hilarious today. You know, are you familiar with 404, the 404 standard? I want somebody to be able to take meme coins. Like, so let's say they can, somebody who came up with the mid curve meme. I want them to be able to just mint that as a token, meme token, whatever, and then they just wrap it up as an NFT with your UGC version of that. So you can have provenance on chain that I came up with this meme coin. And then I can sell it and whatever, earn royalties on it. And then I can, if nobody likes it, I can just roll it back up to the mid-curve meme token. And then, but if people do like it, I have prominence that I was the one who came up with that hilarious meme, yay. And I can trade it and people can go back and forth.
So it's like proof of creation.
Yeah, it's the way that you do IP on chain.
That's
But
pretty
then you
cool.
can actually monetize it.
That's pretty cool.
All right, it's all you.
Well, I've had a lot of time to think of it between y'all two talking, so thank you. Because this is a tough question because there's so much innovation going on in the space, and there's so many very cool, awesome developers that are building very unique projects. There was a project that I was paying a lot of attention to, like 4 years ago, I think. It was called Phonon DAO, and they were finding a way to tokenize private keys as a way to the private key is never shown, but it's extracted away through ZK proofs, and it was a way to send money privately in a way without showing what that private key is. And I thought that was super interesting, and then they just kind of stopped working on it. The tech was super gigabrain. I couldn't even get my head around it really. But so I always thought that was interesting. But I think so that's me personally. More privacy related tools. Personally, take a step back I'll get my Polygon hat on. Build whatever your little developer heart desires on, any VM, EVM, SVM. Polygon is building out this aggregation layer where any blockchain can connect to it, and it's that blockchain still has its own sovereignty, and you're just kind of using this ag layer as a shared bridge to share assets. So then you have DeFi composability that can go from blockchain A wants to interact with a different app on blockchain B using this bridge and call function that the ag layer uses. And I think that there's going to be a lot of very cool innovation that happens there. And it doesn't have to be EVM, it can be SVM, it could be MVM or just XYZ VM. Doesn't matter. Just build what you want on the VM that you want, and but also privacy protocols are cool.
All right, Matt, bring it home before the music plays me off the stage.
Yeah, so I think I want someone to essentially build Venmo that supports multiple currency stablecoins on Avalanche using the Hyper SDK, which right now is getting around 100,000 TPS in a testnet environment. And so I think with a variety of non-dollar stablecoins and dollar stablecoins in collaboration with Stripe and someone like Circle, as well as a variety of other stablecoin providers, you make for a very interesting use case that can replace kind of a piece of tech that we all use almost daily or weekly. And I think Venmo is starting to charge businesses, and so I think this is a great use case because then you're essentially helping businesses. So
Love it. Great. Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
have a good one. Thank you.